The emergency beacon signal cut through the pre-dawn silence at 0237 hours, its distinctive chirp filling the secure communications center at Naval Base Coronado. Captain James Harrington froze, coffee mug suspended halfway to his lips as the implications registered. The signal specialist's voice cracked with disbelief. "Sir, authentication code matches Lieutenant Catherine Pierce." Harrington's blood turned to ice. "That's impossible. Pierce was KIA 3 weeks ago in Syria." "Yes, sir. I attended her memorial." The specialist's fingers flew across the keyboard. "But this is definitely her beacon, transmitting from inside Iran, a Revolutionary Guard facility 40 miles southeast of Tehran." Harrington stared at the blinking dot on the screen. 3 weeks earlier, he had folded the American flag that draped Pierce's empty casket. He'd spoken of her courage as the first female Navy SEAL sniper to see combat, of her dedication to country and team. Yet here was her emergency beacon, broadcasting the Lazarus Protocol, a distress code that could only mean one thing: Catherine Pierce was alive and in grave danger. "Get me Commander Mitchell and find Master Sergeant Matthews, now." Rain fell in heavy sheets across Arlington National Cemetery, the droplets striking the polished wood of the casket with a hollow rhythm. Master Sergeant William Bear Matthews stood apart from the gathered mourners, the cold water streaming down his weathered face. At 60, with 3 decades in Special Forces, his body bore the scars of countless missions, but none cut as deep as this loss. Matthews watched as Harrington presented the folded flag to Sarah Pierce, Catherine's younger sister. The young woman's face was a mask of grief, accepting the triangle of fabric with trembling hands. Matthews looked away, his jaw clenched tight against emotions no warrior is trained to handle. When the ceremony concluded, he remained, watching as the empty casket was lowered into the earth. A burial without a body, a ritual without remains. "She deserved better than this," Harrington said, appearing beside him. "They all do," Matthews replied, his voice gravel against glass. "I know you trained her. I know what she meant to you." Matthews nodded once, rain dripping from his silver-flecked beard. "The mission in Syria. Something doesn't add up. The after-action report has more black ink than text." Harrington glanced around, ensuring they were alone. "This isn't the place. Bill, when will it be the right place? 3 weeks of silence, 3 weeks of classified and need to know. She was my operator. I deserve answers." "You're on administrative leave, Chief. After Afghanistan. After Afghanistan, I'm damaged goods. Is that it?" Matthews' voice hardened. 3 men died under my watch, so now I'm shut out? Go home, Bill. That's an order." Matthews watched Harrington walk away, joining senior officers beneath black umbrellas. For 3 weeks, he had tried to piece together what happened in Syria. Pierce had been leading a reconnaissance team tracking something along the Syrian border. What exactly, he didn't know. Then, communications went dark. The official story: helicopter shot down, no survivors. But 25 years in special operations had taught Matthews to recognize when a story had holes. Details that didn't align, redactions that seemed excessive even for a classified operation. The unusual speed with which Pierce had been declared KIA without recovery of remains. "I'll find the truth, Kate," he promised quietly. "Whatever it is." Matthews jolted awake to the secure phone ringing at 0143 hours. Only 5 people had this number, and none would call at this hour unless something was critically wrong. "Matthews," he answered, instantly alert. "Bear, it's me." The gruff voice belonged to General Frank Sullivan, a former SEAL now serving as senior advisor at the Pentagon. At 72, Sullivan was one of the last active duty officers from the Cold War era, a living legend who had served in every major conflict since Vietnam. "Frank, what's wrong?" "The girl's signal is active. Pierce's emergency beacon is transmitting." Matthews sat bolt upright, heart hammering. "That's impossible." "That's what I said, but it's her authentication code, Lazarus Protocol, coming from inside Iran, a Revolutionary Guard black site southeast of Tehran." "How long?" "Signal first appeared 6 hours ago. Command is keeping it quiet." "Very quiet." Matthews processed the implications. If Pierce's emergency beacon was active, she was alive. The entire story about her death had been fabricated. Someone had lied. "Meet me at Murphy's in an hour," Sullivan said, referring to an old Irish pub near the Pentagon. "And Bill, come alone. This goes deeper than you know." The line went dead. Matthews moved to the window of his sparse Virginia apartment, scanning the darkened street below. Nothing seemed out of place, but years of operational instinct had taught him that seeming and being were rarely aligned. He dressed quickly, strapping his Sig Sauer to his side, a familiar weight, comforting in its solidity. If Pierce was alive, if her beacon was truly transmitting, then everything about the past 3 weeks had been a lie. And lies that big usually came with lethal consequences for anyone who uncovered them. Murphy's was nearly empty at 2:45 hours. Sullivan sat in the back, nursing a glass of whiskey, his imposing frame still carrying the authority of command despite civilian clothes. His silver hair was cut in the same high and tight style he'd worn for 40 years, and his weathered face bore the lines of 1,000 difficult decisions. "You look like hell, Bear," he said by way of greeting. "3 weeks of administrative leave will do that." Matthews slid into the booth. "Now tell me about Pierce." Sullivan pushed a manila folder across the table. "This is everything I could access about the facility where her signal originated. Former Royal Palace converted to an intelligence black site. The Revolutionary Guard uses it for high-value prisoners and intelligence extraction." Matthews felt his stomach tighten. Extraction was a clinical euphemism for torture. The thought of Pierce enduring that for 3 weeks made his blood boil. How did she end up there if her helicopter went down in Syria? That's the million-dollar question. Sullivan opened the folder, revealing satellite imagery of a compound surrounded by high walls. The official story is that much is clear. Someone wanted the world to believe Pierce was dead, including her own command. Why? I don't know. But this signal changes everything. It means she survived whatever happened in Syria, was taken prisoner, and has somehow managed to keep her emergency beacon hidden for 3 weeks. Matthews studied the satellite images. The compound was heavily fortified with guard towers at each corner and multiple subterranean levels. Who else knows about the signal? Officially, just the SIGINT specialist who detected it, Harrington, and Admiral Thompson at JSOC. Sullivan shrugged. Unofficially? That's what worries me. If someone went to the trouble of creating an elaborate cover story about Pierce's death, they won't be happy her beacon is broadcasting. We need to go in and get her. Sullivan's expression hardened. It's not that simple. This is Iranian sovereign territory. Any incursion would be an act of war, and the White House isn't going to authorize a rescue mission based solely on an emergency beacon that officially belongs to a dead woman. Matthews leaned back, processing the implications. So command is just going to leave her there? They're exploring options, Sullivan made air quotes. Diplomatic channels, back-channel negotiations, the kind of bureaucratic speak that means doing nothing while covering their asses. That's not acceptable. No, it's not. Sullivan fixed Matthews with an intense stare. Which is why I'm here talking to you instead of following orders like the good general I'm supposed to be. Matthews understood immediately. You're suggesting we go in unofficially. I'm not suggesting anything on record. I'm simply sharing information with an old friend who might be interested in the fate of his former operator. Sullivan slid another document across the table. This is everything I know about the Lazarus Protocol. The what? During the Cold War, certain special operators were equipped with subdermally implanted emergency beacons designed to be virtually undetectable. The technology was revolutionary. Microscopic transmitters powered by the body's own bioelectricity. They only activate when the operator consciously triggers them through a specific sequence of muscle contractions. And Pierce had one of these? Sullivan nodded. Only a handful of operators in the entire special operations community have them. They're reserved for personnel who routinely operate deep behind enemy lines without support. The beacons are known only to a select few in the intelligence community, which means whoever knew she had one and still declared her dead is very high up the food chain. And has a reason for wanting everyone to believe she's gone, Matthews finished. Sullivan reached into his jacket and removed a small flash drive. Surveillance footage of the compound from the past 48 hours. Guard rotations, patrol patterns, everything our satellites could capture. He slid it across the table. I don't know how you got it. You never saw me. Matthews pocketed the drive. What about you, Frank? You're risking everything coming to me with this. The older man's face softened momentarily. I've been in this game too long, Bear. Seen too many good operators sacrificed on the altar of political expediency. A ghost of a smile crossed his weathered features. Besides, I'm too old and too decorated for them to do much to me now. As they prepared to leave, Sullivan placed a hand on Matthew's shoulder. One more thing. Whatever happened in Afghanistan, the men you lost, that wasn't on you. It's time you knew that. Matthews felt the familiar tightness in his chest at the mention of Afghanistan. The faces of the 3 men who died under his command flashed before his eyes. This isn't about redemption, Frank. Maybe not, but it's a chance to get it right. To bring one of our own home when the system has abandoned them. Rachel Chen's apartment in Alexandria offered a view of the Potomac, the pre-dawn darkness broken only by the distant lights of the capital. As an intelligence analyst for naval special warfare, Chen had access to information systems and databases that could prove crucial. Matthews knocked on her door at 0530 hours, hoping to catch her before she left for work. Chen answered, already dressed in her Navy uniform, her expression shifting from surprise to concern when she saw him. Master Sergeant Matthews, what are you doing here? I need your help, Rachel. It's about Pierce. Her eyes darted to the hallway behind him. You'd better come in. Inside, her apartment was organized with military precision. Running medals hung beside framed degrees in computer science and cryptography. At 42, Chen had spent 15 years supporting special operations from behind the scenes. I thought you were on leave, she said, leading him to her kitchen. What if I told you Pierce isn't dead? Chen's hand froze halfway to the coffee pot. I'd say you need to be careful who you say that to. Her emergency beacon activated 6 hours ago. The signal is coming from Iran. Chen turned to face him, her expression carefully controlled. That's not possible. I read the after-action report myself. The helicopter was completely destroyed. Did you see the bodies? Did anyone? She hesitated. No. The crash site was in contested territory. Recovery wasn't possible. Convenient, isn't it? No bodies, no questions. Chen studied him for a long moment. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that the story about Pierce's death is a cover-up, that she's alive and being held at an Iranian black site, and that someone high up in our command structure wants it to stay that way. She moved to her dining table where a laptop sat. These are serious accusations, the kind that end careers or worse. I don't care about my career. I care about getting Pierce out before it's too late. Chen opened her laptop. What do you need? Everything you can find on this Iranian facility. Guard rotations, security systems, personnel. And I need to know if there have been any unusual communication patterns between our command and Iranian assets in the weeks before Pierce's mission. Her fingers paused over the keyboard. You're talking about identifying a potential traitor in Naval Special Warfare Command. I'm talking about finding the truth. Chen took a deep breath. I can't access that kind of information from home. I'll need to be at my workstation, and even then, these searches will leave digital footprints. Use this, Matthews said, handing her the flash drive Sullivan had given him. Whatever you find, download it here. Nothing through official channels. She nodded, understanding the gravity of what he was asking. I'll do what I can, but if you're right about this, you're putting yourself in the crosshairs of some very powerful people. I'm already there. Have been since Afghanistan. I'll have something for you by tonight. Meet me at Washington Harbor at 2000 hours. As Matthews turned to leave, Chen called after him. Be careful, Chief, and watch your back. The next 12 hours passed in a blur of preparation and planning. Matthews converted his apartment into an impromptu operations center, covering the windows and spreading maps across the dining table. Sullivan's intel had given him a starting point, But he needed more if he was going to mount a rescue operation on Iranian soil. At precisely 2,000 hours, he parked his truck at Washington Harbor. The Potomac flowed dark and silent, the lights of Georgetown reflecting off its surface. A few couples strolled along the waterfront, but otherwise the area was quiet. Chen appeared 10 minutes later, carrying a briefcase, maintaining the appearance of a casual evening visitor. Matthews met her at the wooden railing overlooking the water. "Walk with me," she said quietly. They moved along the riverside path, away from the restaurants and remaining visitors. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of the river. "I found something," Chen said once they were alone. "Multiple somethings, actually. None of it good?" She reached into her briefcase and handed him the flash drive. "First, the facility. It's worse than we thought. 3 subterranean levels, state-of-the-art security systems, and at least 30 Revolutionary Guard personnel on site at all times. Can we breach it?" "Alone? It would be suicide?" She glanced at him. "But that's not the worst of it. I found communications that had been scrubbed from our systems, officially deleted but still cached on backup servers." "Communications about what?" "About Pierce. Her mission wasn't just reconnaissance. She was sent to verify the presence of a Russian nuclear scientist named Petrov, an expert in miniaturized nuclear weapons design, who defected last year. Intelligence suggested he had been captured by Syrian forces and was being transferred to Iran. Matthews processed this new information. So Pierce was tracking more than just nuclear material. She was tracking a person who could weaponize it. Chen nodded. The communications indicate that Command knew the mission carried an extreme risk of compromise. They sent her anyway with minimal support. Why Pierce? Why not a more experienced team? That's where it gets interesting. Pierce specifically requested the mission, volunteered for it, and Admiral Rawlings personally approved it, bypassing the normal chain of command. Admiral Victor Rawlings was the Deputy Commander of Naval Special Warfare, a political appointee with a reputation for ambition that exceeded his operational judgment. Rawlings and Pierce had no connection. Why would he take a personal interest? I don't know, but 24 hours after Pierce was declared KIA, Rawlings authorized a complete purge of all mission data. That's highly unusual, even for classified operations. Matthews felt a cold certainty settling in his gut. He's covering something up. It gets worse. 12 hours ago, someone accessed my security credentials to check what files I'd been viewing. Someone with administrative-level clearance. They know you're helping me. She nodded grimly. I took precautions, left false trails, but it won't hold them off for long. Whatever's happening here goes to the highest levels. You need to disappear for a while. Go somewhere safe. Chen smiled thinly. Already planned. I'm visiting my parents in California tomorrow. Official leave request and everything. Smart. There's something else you should know. The most recent communications suggest they're planning to move Pierce within the next 48 hours. Some kind of transfer to Russian custody. Why would they give her to the Russians? I don't know, but once she leaves that facility, finding her again will be nearly impossible. The implications were clear. Whatever window existed for a rescue operation was closing rapidly. Matthews would need to move fast, assemble a team, and plan an insertion into hostile territory with minimal resources and no official support. I should go, Chen said, looking back toward the parking area. The longer we're seen together, the more dangerous it becomes. Matthews nodded. Be careful. Bring her home, Chief. As Chen walked away, Matthews remained at the railing, watching the dark water flow beneath him. 3 weeks ago, he had stood at Catherine Pierce's gravesite, doubting the official story of her death. Now he knew his instincts had been right. She was alive, a prisoner in an Iranian black site with a Russian transfer looming. And somehow, someone at the highest levels of naval special warfare was involved. His phone vibrated in his pocket. A text from an unknown number. Your friend Chen compromised, her apt being watched. Trust no one in official chain. S. Matthews looked up to see 2 dark SUVs with government plates pulling into the harbor parking lot. Men in suits emerged, scanning the waterfront. The crack of a rifle shot echoed across the water. 100 yards away, Rachel Chen crumpled to the ground, a dark stain spreading across her chest. The men in suits were now running, weapons drawn. This wasn't a government operation to detain a rogue SEAL. This was an execution. The hunt had begun. The abandoned warehouse in rural Virginia had been a CIA safe house during the Cold War. Sullivan had given Matthews the access codes, telling him it was off the books, forgotten in the digital age. As Matthews pulled up in a stolen truck, headlights off, he saw another vehicle already parked inside, an old Land Rover with mud-spattered plates. The man waiting in the shadows was Michael Iron Mike Donovan, 59, a former SEAL explosives expert with hands so steady he could disarm a Soviet-era mine blindfolded, which he had done twice during operations behind the Iron Curtain. "You look like shit, Bear," Donovan said, embracing Matthews in a bone-crushing hug. "Good to see you too, Mike." Sullivan called. "Said you were putting the band back together for an unsanctioned op." Donovan's weathered face broke into a grim smile. "Just like the old days." "Not quite. This time we're going up against our own people as well as the Iranians." Donovan's smile faded. "What's going on, Bear?" "Pierce is alive. Being held in Iran. Someone high up in command wants to keep it that way." The door opened, and Thomas Doc Reynolds entered. At 62, the former combat medic had transitioned to civilian life as a trauma surgeon, but his eyes still carried the focused intensity of a man who had performed emergency procedures under fire. "Bear, Mike." He nodded to each man. "Sullivan said it was important. Said Pierce needs us." "She does," Matthews confirmed. Two more figures appeared in the doorway. Carlos Ghost Ramirez, 55, infiltration specialist and linguist who spoke 6 languages including Farsi, and James Eagle Eye Wilson, 57, a legendary sniper with 84 confirmed kills, a record only recently surpassed by Pierce herself. Matthews surveyed the assembled team. Each man was decades past his physical prime, gray-haired and weathered. But each possessed something more valuable than youth: experience, wisdom, and an unbreakable bond forged in the world's most dangerous places. "I know you all have lives now," Matthews began. "Families, jobs, responsibilities. What I'm asking you to do is illegal, dangerous, and completely unsanctioned. If we're caught, we're on our own. No backup, no extraction, no diplomatic cover." "Cut the recruitment speech, Bear," Wilson said dryly. "We're here, aren't we? Just tell us what the hell is going on." Matthews laid out everything: Pierce's emergency signal, her secret mission to track the Russian scientist, Chen's discovery about Rawlings, and her murder at Washington Harbor. "Jesus," Ramirez whispered when Matthews finished. "They killed Chen in public? That's not standard procedure, that's an execution." "Exactly," Matthews agreed. "Whoever's behind this is willing to eliminate anyone who gets close to the truth." "And what is the truth?" Reynolds asked. Sullivan arrived as if on cue, carrying a locked briefcase. "The truth, gentlemen, is Operation Prometheus." He placed the briefcase on a dusty table and entered a combination. Inside was a file stamped with classification so high most generals wouldn't have clearance to view it. 10 years ago, Rawlings' only son was killed during a covert operation in Russia. Officially, he died in a training accident stateside. The truth was buried. "Let me guess," Matthews said. "The son discovered something he wasn't supposed to." Sullivan nodded grimly. "Evidence of Russian infiltration at the highest levels of American military intelligence. Instead of acting on the intelligence, someone made a decision to eliminate the messenger." "And Rawlings found out," Donovan surmised. "Eventually." By then, grief had curdled into something darker. He made contact with the same Russian operatives his son had uncovered. Not just for revenge, but for profit. Millions funneled through shell corporations in the Caymans. "What does this have to do with Pierce?" Wilson demanded. Sullivan opened the file. Operation Prometheus, a joint Russian-Iranian plan to place miniaturized nuclear devices in 5 major U.S. cities to be activated simultaneously by sleeper agents. Pierce was sent to confirm the existence of these devices being assembled in Syria. She found them, but she also found Petrov, the scientist who designed them. "And someone tipped off the Iranians," Matthews said. "Rawlings." Pierce was captured instead of killed because Petrov recognized her value. She knows the identities of every sleeper agent in the U.S. network, information she transmitted via the Lazarus protocol before she was captured. Then why is she still alive? Reynolds asked. Why keep her if they know she sent the information? Because they're not certain what she transmitted or to whom. They've been interrogating her for 3 weeks, and now they're out of time. The devices are ready. The operation is in motion. Matthews studied the satellite images of the Iranian facility. When is the transfer to Russian custody? Intel suggests within 36 hours. After that, she disappears forever. The team exchanged glances, a silent communication born of years operating together. How do we get there? Donovan asked, the question acknowledging their decision without needing to state it. Sullivan smiled faintly. I have a friend with a plane, Victor Hayes, former Air America pilot from Vietnam. He can get you to Iraq, no questions asked. From there, you're on your own. We'll need weapons, equipment, transportation inside Iran, Ramirez noted. Already arranged. There's a cache at the landing site in Iraq. Old Cold War supplies, but reliable. Matthews looked at each man in turn. These weren't just former teammates, they were brothers. Men who had seen him at his worst and best, who knew his strengths and flaws, who trusted him with their lives as he trusted them with his. This is a one-way ticket, he warned. Even if we get Pierce out, we'll be fugitives. We may never come home. Wilson snorted. We buried too many friends in foreign soil, Bear. I'm not adding Pierce to that list. I'm in, Donovan said. Me too, Reynolds nodded. Was there ever any doubt? Ramirez asked with a grim smile. Matthews felt something he hadn't experienced since before Afghanistan. Purpose. Clear. Unambiguous purpose. Wheels up in 2 hours. Let's bring our girl home. The Gulfstream jet cut through the night sky, its modified engines barely a whisper as it flew a carefully plotted course to avoid detection. Victor Hayes, 72, former CIA pilot, handled the aircraft with the casual mastery of a man who had flown through Soviet air defenses during the Cold War. Frank said you boys are on a mission of mercy, Hayes commented over his shoulder to Matthews, who occupied the co-pilot seat. Something like that, Matthews replied. Uh-huh. Hayes adjusted their heading slightly. Just like the old days. Officially, I'm flying a routine cargo run to Dubai. Paperwork's all in order. In the cabin behind them, the team was preparing equipment and reviewing intelligence. Sullivan had provided detailed schematics of the Iranian facility, guard rotations, and potential insertion points. Ramirez, fluent in Farsi, was reviewing intercepted communications to identify code words and procedures. 6 hours to landing, Hayes announced. Better get some rest while you can. Matthews returned to the cabin, where Wilson was methodically cleaning a disassembled sniper rifle. The familiar ritual, each part laid out in precise order, each movement economic and practiced, was oddly comforting. How's the arthritis, Jake? Matthews asked quietly. Wilson flexed his fingers. Hurts like a bitch in cold weather, but I can still outshoot men half my age. He paused. Pierce being the exception. She learned from the best. She exceeded the best. Wilson's weathered face softened slightly. When she broke my long-distance record in Kandahar, I wasn't even mad. Proud as hell, actually. Like watching your kid surpass you. Matthews nodded, understanding exactly what Wilson meant. Pierce had been like a daughter to all of them in different ways. The heir to their hard-won knowledge, the next generation of warrior they had helped forge. We'll get her back, Matthews said with quiet certainty. Damn right we will. Wilson resumed his methodical cleaning. And God help anyone who stands in our way. 4 hours into the flight, Hayes called Matthews back to the cockpit. His expression was grim. Just got word through an old frequency. Sullivan's been taken into custody. FBI stormed his house an hour ago. Matthews felt his blood run cold. Rawlings? Hayes nodded. Likely. And if they got to Sullivan, they might know about this operation. Can they track us? Not a chance. This bird is a ghost. No transponder. Fuselage designed to minimize radar signature. Cold War relic the boys at Langley forgot to requisition back. Matthews processed this new information. Sullivan's arrest meant they were truly on their own now, with no one watching their back stateside. It also meant the window for rescue was closing even faster than they'd anticipated. How much longer until we land? 2 hours to the airstrip in northern Iraq. From there, you're on your own to the border. Matthews returned to the cabin to brief the team. The news about Sullivan was met with grim silence. If they took Frank, they know about us, Donovan concluded. Maybe, Matthews acknowledged, but they don't know exactly where we're going or how we plan to get Pierce out. Unless there's another leak, Wilson observed, his eyes scanning each team member in turn. The unspoken question hung in the air. Could one of them be working for Rawlings? The seed of doubt, once planted, could destroy their cohesion and trust, their most valuable assets. I've known each of you for 30 years, Matthews said firmly. Fought alongside you, bled with you, grieved with you. If I can't trust you, I can't trust anyone. And right now, Pierce needs us to trust each other. The tension eased slightly, but not completely. Decades of operational experience had taught them all that betrayal could come from the most unexpected sources. 2 hours to insertion, Matthews continued. Check your gear, review your roles. Once we cross into Iran, we maintain radio silence except for emergency communications. If anyone wants out, now's the time. No one moved. Then let's finish this briefing and get some rest. It might be the last we get for a while. The desert sprawled below them like a vast ocean of darkness, as haze brought the Gulf Stream down toward a strip of flatland marked only by small solar-powered lights. The landing was smooth despite the improvised runway, a testament to the pilot's skill. End of the line, boys, Hayes said as the engines wound down. Your transport's waiting half a mile east. The cache is in the abandoned hangar. Matthews gripped the old pilot's shoulder. Thanks, Victor. We owe you. Hayes waved him off. Just bring that girl home. And when this is over, look me up. I've got a bottle of 1960 Macallan I've been saving for a good reason. The team disembarked quickly, moving through the darkness with practiced efficiency despite their age. The desert air was cold, a sharp contrast to the heat that would come with daylight. Matthews led them to the coordinates Sullivan had provided. The hangar was little more than a corrugated metal shell, camouflaged with desert paint and partially buried in sand. A relic from operations long since disavowed. Inside, they found their transportation. 2 modified Land Rovers with reinforced suspensions and run-flat tires. The weapons cache was comprehensive, a mix of American, Russian, and European firearms with matching ammunition, communications equipment, night vision devices, and tactical gear. Cold War vintage, but well-maintained, Donovan observed, inspecting an MP5 submachine gun. The equipment doesn't make the operator, Matthews reminded him. We've done more with less. They loaded the vehicles efficiently, each man falling into roles established decades earlier. Within 30 minutes, they were ready to move. Ramirez, their navigation specialist, plotted the course to the Iranian border. There's an old smuggling route through these hills. Not on any official maps, but I've used it before. Should get us within 20 miles of the target. Guards? Wilson asked. Minimal. The terrain is considered too rough for regular crossings. Matthews checked his watch. We cross in darkness, reach the observation point by dawn, and move on the facility tomorrow night. That gives us 12 hours for surveillance and final planning. The team moved out, driving with headlights off, using night vision to navigate the rugged terrain. The vehicle's engines had been modified to run quieter than standard military transports, another relic of Cold War operations when American forces needed to move undetected through hostile territory. As they approached the Iranian border, Matthews felt a familiar calm settling over him, the operational focus that had defined most of his adult life. The doubts, the fears, the physical limitations of age all receded, replaced by absolute clarity of purpose. The border crossing went exactly as Ramirez had predicted, a narrow pass between weathered hills marked only by the occasional rock cairn used by local smugglers. No guards, no sensors, no indication that they had passed from one nation to another, except for the GPS coordinates on their secure devices. They were in Iran. Officially, they didn't exist. Their mission wasn't sanctioned. Their presence constituted an act of war. If captured, they would be labeled terrorists, denied by their own government, and executed after interrogation. And yet, as Matthews glanced at the determined faces of his team, illuminated faintly by the vehicle's instruments, he saw not fear, but resolve. These men had given their youth to their country. Now, in the autumn of their lives, they were giving whatever remained for one of their own. Dawn was breaking as they reached the observation point Ramirez had selected, a ridgeline overlooking the valley where the Iranian facility stood. They concealed the vehicles in a dry riverbed, camouflaging them with tarps and local vegetation, then moved on foot to establish their surveillance position. Wilson set up his sniper hide with the methodical precision that had made him legendary, while Donovan prepared the Tactical Operations Center, a portable communications and planning station that would serve as their command post. Through high-powered optics, they studied the facility in the growing light. The former palace was an imposing structure, its ancient stone walls reinforced with modern security measures, cameras, motion sensors, reinforced gates, and guard towers at each corner. Main entrance is heavily guarded, Wilson reported, counting personnel through his scope. 2 checkpoints, vehicle barriers, at least 8 guards visible. Ramirez studied thermal imaging displays. Significant heat signatures throughout. I count approximately 40 personnel inside the main building, plus perimeter guards. Any sign of Pierce? Matthews asked. Impossible to tell from here. The lower levels are shielded from thermal imaging. According to the intel, prisoner cells are on the 3rd sublevel, Donovan added, reviewing the schematics Sullivan had provided. Maximum security, minimum visibility. Matthews considered their options. A frontal assault was suicide, even if they had been 20 years younger with a full SEAL team. They needed another way in. Carlos, what about access points besides the main gate? Ramirez adjusted the thermal scope, scanning the perimeter. There's a maintenance entrance on the east side, smaller security footprint. And, he paused, focusing on a specific area. There's what appears to be an old drainage system, not on the modern schematics, but consistent with original palace construction from the 18th century. Could we access the facility through it? Possibly. These palaces typically had extensive water management systems, given the desert location. If it connects to the lower levels, it could provide a way in that bypasses most security. Matthews nodded. That's our play. Jake, you'll establish overwatch from this position. Mike, prep breaching charges for the drainage access if needed. Doc, Carlos, you're with me on the insertion team. Timeline? Donovan asked. Matthews checked his watch. We move at AO 100 hours. Minimal visibility, maximum guard fatigue. That gives us 16 hours for rest rotation and final prep. As the team established their base camp, Matthews stepped away briefly, staring at the facility in the distance. Somewhere in that stone fortress, Catherine Pierce was being held. After 3 weeks of interrogation, what condition would she be in? Would she even be able to move under her own power? He pushed the questions aside. Pierce was a SEAL, the first woman to complete the training, the first to see combat with the teams. She had broken every barrier, exceeded every expectation. If anyone could survive 3 weeks in captivity with spirit intact, it was her. We're coming, Kate, he whispered to the wind. Hold on just a little longer. The night settled over the Iranian desert like a shroud, the temperature dropping rapidly as stars blazed in the cloudless sky. At midnight, Matthews gathered the team for final briefing. Check communications, he ordered, adjusting his tactical radio. Each man reported in, their voices clear in the encrypted channel. They would maintain radio silence once the operation began, communicating only through hand signals and prearranged codes, unless absolutely necessary. Wilson would remain at the observation post, providing overwatch and long-range fire support if needed. The rest would move to the drainage access point Ramirez had identified, infiltrate the facility, locate Pierce, and extract along the same route. If everything went according to plan, they would be back across the border before sunrise. If not, there was no contingency, no backup, no extraction team waiting to pull them out if things went sideways. This was it. All or nothing. Final equipment check, Matthews ordered. Each man verified weapons, ammunition, and specialized gear. Remember, Matthews said as they prepared to move out, we're not the men we were 20 years ago. We can't outrun or outfight the opposition. We use our experience, our brains, and we move like ghosts. In and out, no heroics. They moved through the darkness toward the facility, using natural terrain features for cover. Despite their age, each man moved with the practiced stealth of decades in special operations, placing each foot deliberately, maintaining awareness of sight lines and potential observation posts. The drainage access point was exactly where Ramirez had predicted. A stone culvert half buried in sand, its entrance partially collapsed from decades of neglect. While Matthews and Reynolds established security, Donovan and Ramirez cleared the opening enough for passage. It's tight, but passable, Ramirez reported, and I can feel airflow. It connects to something still open inside. Matthews nodded. I'll take point. Carlos behind me, then Doc. Mike, you cover our six. One by one, they entered the ancient drainage system, using red-filtered lights to preserve their night vision while navigating the narrow passage. The air was stale and thick with dust, but definitely flowing from the direction of the facility. They moved in silence, each step carefully placed to avoid dislodging loose stones. After 20 minutes of claustrophobic crawling, the tunnel widened into what had once been a water collection chamber. Multiple passages branched off in different directions. Ramirez consulted the thermal imaging device, now set to detect air currents rather than heat signatures. That way, he whispered, indicating the passage that showed the strongest airflow. It should lead toward the main building's foundation. They continued through the passage, which gradually began to show signs of more recent construction. Modern concrete reinforcing the ancient stonework, electrical conduits running along the ceiling. We're under the facility now, Matthews breathed, checking the micro GPS unit Sullivan had provided, which worked on inertial navigation rather than satellite signals that could be blocked by the thick walls. The passage ended at a heavy iron grate, beyond which they could see a modern utility corridor, pipes and cables running along concrete walls illuminated by dim emergency lighting. Donovan examined the grate. Old school, simple lock mechanism. He produced a set of specialized tools and began working on the ancient padlock. Within moments, the lock clicked open, and they eased the grate aside with minimal noise. Matthews peered into the corridor, confirming it was empty before signaling the team forward. According to the schematics, they were now on the lowest level of the facility, sub-level 3, where intelligence indicated the high-security prisoners were held. The air carried a distinctive antiseptic smell, masking something darker underneath. Matthews signaled for the team to hold position while he checked around the corner. The corridor extended for 50 meters before intersecting with a larger hallway. At the intersection, a single guard stood with his back to them, rifle slung casually over his shoulder. Matthews withdrew silently, signaling the situation to Ramirez. The infiltration specialist nodded understanding and moved forward, a garrote wire already in his hands. Despite his age, Ramirez moved without sound, closing the distance to the guard in slow, measured steps. The guard never knew what hit him. One moment he was standing watch, the next, Ramirez's wire was around his throat, cutting off both air and blood flow to the brain. The guard lost consciousness in seconds, without making a sound. They secured the unconscious man in the utility corridor, taking his security badge and radio. Ramirez, who spoke fluent Farsi, listened to the radio traffic briefly. Standard check-ins every 30 minutes, he reported. We have 22 minutes until this one is due to report. Matthews nodded. Let's move. Cell block should be east of here. They proceeded cautiously, using the guard's security badge to access the main detention area. The cell block was eerily quiet, emergency lighting casting long shadows across the floor. 6 reinforced doors lined each side of the corridor, each with a small observation window and electronic lock. The team split up, checking each cell through the observation windows. Most were empty, showing signs of recent but not current occupation. Clear, Donovan reported from the far end. Clear here, Reynolds added. Matthews felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. Had they come too late? Had Pierce already been transferred? Then Ramirez's urgent whisper came through the comm. Founder, Cell 4. Matthews moved quickly to Ramirez's position and peered through the observation window. Inside the Spartan cell, a figure sat motionless on a metal cot, head bowed. The prisoner wore standard-issue gray scrubs, dark hair falling forward to obscure her face. But the build was right. It had to be Pierce. Donovan made short work of the electronic lock, bypassing it with specialized equipment designed for exactly this purpose. The door opened with a soft click, and Matthews entered first, weapon ready. The prisoner's head came up slowly, revealing a face gaunt from deprivation but unmistakably Catherine Pierce. Her eyes, though sunken with exhaustion, still held the sharp intelligence that had made her an exceptional operator. For a moment, she stared at Matthews as if seeing a ghost. Then recognition dawned, followed by disbelief. Bear? Her voice was a hoarse whisper, raw from disuse or screaming or both. How? Lazarus Protocol, Matthews said simply, moving to her side. Can you walk? Pierce attempted to stand, wobbling slightly before steadying herself. I can do whatever I need to do to get out of here. Reynolds conducted a quick medical assessment, his experienced hands checking for injuries that might impede their escape. Dehydration, malnutrition, evidence of interrogation techniques, but no critical injuries. She can move. We need to go, Ramirez urged from the doorway. 15 minutes until radio check. As they helped Pierce from the cell, she gripped Matthew's arm with surprising strength. Bear, there's something you need to know. This goes beyond me. There's an operation called Prometheus. Nuclear devices in 5 U.S. cities, set to detonate simultaneously. Matthews nodded grimly. We know. Sullivan found the intel you transmitted before capture. Not all of it, Pierce insisted. I couldn't send the activation timeline. It's happening soon, within 72 hours. The revelation added new urgency to their already critical mission. This wasn't just about rescuing Pierce anymore. It was about preventing a catastrophic attack on American soil. We need to move, Matthews ordered. Same route out. Carlos on point. I'll assist Pierce. Doc behind us. Mike covering our 6. They moved back toward the utility corridor, maintaining silence and vigilance. The facility remained quiet, most personnel either off-duty or focused on external security rather than the supposedly secure detention level. They had reached the intersection where they'd neutralized the guard when disaster struck. A security patrol rounded the corner unexpectedly. 4 armed men who froze momentarily at the sight of the American team and their rescued prisoner. The moment of surprise lasted less than a second before both sides reacted. Donovan and Ramirez fired simultaneously, suppressed weapons making little more than pneumatic coughs in the confined space. 3 guards went down, but the 4th managed to trigger an alarm before Matthews' shot found him. Immediately, klaxons blared throughout the facility, emergency lights shifting from white to pulsing red. So much for the quiet approach, Donovan muttered, reloading. Move, Matthews ordered. Back to the drainage tunnel, double time. They ran, Pierce keeping pace despite her weakened condition, the team maintaining disciplined formation even in retreat. Behind them, shouts in Farsi echoed down the corridors as security forces mobilized. They reached the utility corridor just as the first pursuers appeared at the intersection. Ramirez and Donovan provided covering fire, while Matthews helped Pierce through the grate, followed by Reynolds. Go, Donovan shouted to Ramirez. I'll hold them here. Like hell you will, Ramirez replied, continuing to fire measured bursts down the corridor. We all go, or none go. That's the rule. Donovan didn't argue further, ducking through the grate as Ramirez maintained fire. Once Donovan was through, Ramirez tossed his last flashbang grenade down the corridor, temporarily blinding and disorienting their pursuers, then scrambled through the opening. Donovan pulled the grate closed behind him, quickly securing it with a flexible explosive charge set with a 30-second delay. That won't hold them long, he warned as they retreated into the ancient drainage system. It doesn't need to, Matthews replied. Just long enough. They moved as quickly as possible through the cramped tunnel, Pierce navigating the difficult terrain through sheer force of will. Behind them, the muffled thump of Donovan's explosive collapsing part of the tunnel provided momentary relief from pursuit. Wilson's voice crackled through their comms for the first time since the operation began. Bear, I've got movement all over the facility perimeter. They're deploying search teams to the surrounding area. Acknowledged, Matthews replied. We're proceeding to Extraction Point Alpha. Cover our exit. Already on it. I count 8 tangos down. They have no idea where the fire is coming from. Despite his age, Wilson remained one of the deadliest snipers alive, capable of placing shots with surgical precision, even in the challenging conditions of night operations. The team emerged from the drainage tunnel into the cool desert night, immediately taking cover behind nearby rocks as they assessed the situation. The facility behind them was fully alert now, searchlights sweeping the perimeter as guards shouted orders. Vehicles? Matthews asked Ramirez. 2 kilometers west, still concealed unless they have thermal imaging drones. Which they might, Donovan added grimly. Iranian Revolutionary Guard has been upgrading their tech. Pierce, who had remained remarkably composed throughout the escape, spoke up. There's a Russian SVR team on site. They arrived yesterday to coordinate my transfer. Full tactical gear, latest equipment. That complicates things, Matthews acknowledged. New plan. We split up, multiple vectors to the vehicles. Carlos, take Pierce directly to Extraction Point. Doc, you're with them. Mike and I will create a diversion to draw pursuit away from your route. Pierce shook her head. No, I'm not leaving you behind. This isn't a debate, Lieutenant. You have critical intelligence that needs to reach U.S. command. That's the mission priority now. Before Pierce could argue further, the distinctive whump-whump of helicopter rotors reached them. A searchlight swept the ridge above, followed by the rattle of door-mounted machine guns firing into the rocks. Go, Matthews ordered, pushing Pierce toward Ramirez. That's an order. Ramirez hesitated only a moment before nodding and leading Pierce away, Reynolds following close behind. Matthews and Donovan moved in the opposite direction, finding cover among larger rock formations as they prepared to engage the helicopter. Just like Caballito 2, Donovan remarked, readying his weapon. Except we were a hell of a lot younger then, Matthews replied. Speak for yourself. I'm like fine wine, better with age. Despite the danger, Matthews felt a grim smile touch his lips. This, the banter in the face of death, the absolute trust in one's teammates, was what he had missed since his forced retirement. Not the killing, not the danger, but the brotherhood forged in fire. The helicopter made another pass, searchlight probing the rocky terrain. When it banked for a third approach, Donovan raised his weapon, a specialized rifle capable of piercing the light armor of military helicopters. Any time now, Mike, Matthews urged as the aircraft drew closer. Patience, Bear, patience. The helicopter hovered almost directly overhead, its searchlight creating harsh shadows among the rocks. Donovan waited until the perfect moment, then fired 3 precise shots into the aircraft's tail rotor assembly. The effect was immediate. The helicopter lurched violently, spinning as the pilot fought for control. It careened away from their position, descending rapidly before making a hard emergency landing a kilometer away. Still got it, Donovan said with satisfaction. Save the celebration, Matthews warned. Ground forces incoming. They could see the flashlights of search teams converging on their position, drawn by the helicopter's last known coordinates. Matthews checked his watch. Pierce and the others should have covered enough distance by now to reach the vehicles undetected. Time to disappear, he told Donovan. Exfil route Bravo. They moved swiftly through the darkness, using every scrap of cover the desert terrain offered. Despite their age, both men navigated the difficult ground with the practiced ease of operators who had spent decades in similar environments. They had covered half the distance to the extraction point when Matthews' comm crackled to life with Wilson's voice. Bear, you've got a problem. Drone overhead, thermal imaging. They've spotted you. Almost simultaneously, they heard the distinctive crack of Wilson's sniper rifle echoing across the desert, followed by his calm report. Drone down, but they know your position. Matthews and Donovan increased their pace, pushing aging bodies to their limits. Behind them, shouts and flashlights indicated pursuit was closing in. We're not going to outrun them, Donovan said between labored breaths. We don't need to, Matthews replied. Just need to reach the vehicles. They crested a small rise and saw the extraction point below, a dry riverbed where their vehicles remained concealed under camouflage tarps. Reynolds was already at the wheel of one, engine running, while Ramirez helped Pierce into the back seat. "Where's Jake?" Matthews asked as they reached the vehicles. "Still in his hide," Ramirez reported. "Says he'll cover our withdrawal." Matthews grabbed the radio. "Jake, get your ass down here now. That's an order." Wilson's calm voice came back immediately. "Negative, Bear. Someone needs to stay behind. Slow them down. I've got the best position for it." "We don't leave anyone behind," Matthews insisted. "That's not how we operate." "It's exactly how we operate when the mission demands it." Wilson's voice was steady. "Pierce has critical intelligence. She needs to reach friendly territory. I can buy you that time." Matthews knew Wilson was right, tactically speaking. A skilled sniper in a prepared position could delay pursuit significantly, allowing the main group to escape. But that didn't make it any easier to accept. "Jake?" "It's been an honor, Bear," Wilson interrupted. "Now get our girl home." The radio went silent as Wilson switched to a different frequency, focusing entirely on his deadly work. In the distance, they could hear the crack of his rifle as he engaged the pursuing forces. Matthews stood frozen for a moment, torn between mission and loyalty. Donovan placed a hand on his shoulder. "He's made his choice, Bear. We honor it by making it count." With a grim nod, Matthews climbed into the second vehicle. "Everyone moves to extraction point, Charlie. Alternative route through the northern pass." As they drove away, headlights off to maintain stealth, Matthews glanced back at the ridge where Wilson remained. The distant flashes of gunfire told the story of one man holding off dozens, a last stand worthy of the legends they had all aspired to be. "Godspeed, Jake," Matthews whispered. "We'll remember." The remaining team crossed back into Iraq shortly before dawn, using the same smuggling route they had taken into Iran. They abandoned the vehicles at a predetermined point, hiking the final kilometers to where Hayes waited with his Gulfstream. The old pilot said nothing about Wilson's absence, understanding without being told. In the intelligence community, silence often spoke volumes. Pierce had maintained remarkable composure throughout the extraction, but once aboard the aircraft, the full weight of her ordeal seemed to catch up with her. Reynolds administered IV fluids and nutrition, treating the most obvious signs of her captivity while the plane climbed to cruising altitude. "Where are we going?" Pierce asked Matthews, her voice stronger after receiving medical care. "A private airfield in Virginia. Sullivan arranged it." "Sullivan's been arrested," she reminded him. "Rawlings will have people waiting at any location Sullivan knew about." Matthews nodded grimly. "Which is why we're not going to Virginia. Hayes is taking us to a backup location only he and I know about." "And where is that?" "A ranch in Montana. Off-grid, defensible, with secure communications. From there, we can reach out to trusted contacts in the intelligence community." Pierce considered this. "Rawlings isn't working alone. There's a network within naval intelligence, possibly extending to other agencies." "I know. Sullivan found evidence of financial transactions linking Rawlings to Russian intelligence. Millions of dollars through shell corporations." "It's not just about money," Pierce said, her expression darkening. "Rawlings lost his son in a covert operation gone wrong. The government covered it up, labeled it a training accident. He blames the entire system." Matthews nodded. Grief twisted into revenge. "I've seen it before. But this goes beyond revenge. Operation Prometheus is designed to destabilize American society at a fundamental level. Nuclear devices in 5 major cities, timed to detonate simultaneously. Do you know the locations?" Pierce nodded. "New York, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, Chicago, and Miami. Each device is small, designed to minimize detection while maximizing casualties and panic. When? 72 hours from now, midnight Eastern Time." The timeline left little margin for error. They needed to get Pierce and her intelligence to someone with the authority to act on it. Someone they could trust in a system that had already proven compromised at the highest levels. "There's one person who might help," Matthews said after a moment's thought. "Admiral James Hollister, former JSOC commander, now deputy director at the National Security Agency. He and Sullivan served together in Desert Storm. Can we trust him? We don't have much choice, but Hollister's reputation is impeccable. Old school, by-the-book patriot who places country above politics." Pierce nodded, accepting the assessment. How do we contact him without exposing ourselves? Hayes has connections, secure channels left over from the Cold War that bypass normal communications networks. As if on cue, Hayes emerged from the cockpit, leaving his co-pilot in control. Course set for Montana, ETA 4 hours. He glanced at Pierce. Good to see you alive, Lieutenant. Your beacon caused quite a stir. Lazarus Protocol, she acknowledged. Never thought I'd need to use it. Glad you had it. Hayes handed Matthews a satellite phone. This connects to a secure relay station in Alaska. From there, you can reach anyone without the call being traced, limited to 5 minutes before the encryption degrades. Matthews took the phone. Thanks, Victor. I owe you. You owe me nothing, the old pilot replied. Just making good on promises made long ago. As Hayes returned to the cockpit, Matthews dialed a number from memory. After several rings, a cautious voice answered. Identify. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, November 1991. A pause, then. Matthews, is that you? Hello, James. We need to talk. Admiral James Hollister received them personally at a private airstrip in Montana, owned by a corporation that existed only on paper. At 68, the former SEAL still carried himself with the rigid posture of a man accustomed to command, though his hair had gone completely white and deep lines marked his face. You look like hell, Bill, he greeted Matthews as they disembarked. Feel worse, Matthews replied, clasping the Admiral's hand. Hollister's gaze moved to Pierce, his expression softening with something like paternal concern. Lieutenant, when they declared you KIA, I had my doubts. Glad to see them confirmed. Thank you, sir. Let's get you all inside. We can talk securely there. Hollister led them to a convoy of unmarked SUVs that transported them to what appeared to be a hunting lodge nestled in the Montana wilderness. In reality, it was an NSA safe house, complete with state-of-the-art security systems and communications equipment. Once inside, with medical personnel attending to Pierce and the others, Hollister pulled Matthews aside. Sullivan's been charged with treason, Bill. They're saying he passed classified information to foreign operatives. Bullshit. Frank's being framed by Rawlings. I know. Hollister's expression was grim. I've been gathering evidence against Rawlings for months. Suspected he was compromised, but couldn't prove it. Then Pierce disappears in Syria, declared dead with remarkable speed and minimal investigation. You didn't buy the official story? Would you? Pierce was the best operator I'd seen in decades. The circumstances stank from the beginning. Matthews felt a weight lift slightly from his shoulders. Having Hollister as an ally significantly improved their chances of stopping Prometheus and exposing Rawlings' network. We lost Wilson, Matthews said quietly. Stayed behind to cover our exfil. Probably KIA. Hollister closed his eyes briefly. Jake was one of the good ones. I'll make sure he's remembered properly when this is over. If we survive what's coming. Tell me everything, Hollister ordered. Matthews laid out the entire operation, from Sullivan's initial contact about Pierce's beacon to their infiltration of the Iranian facility and the intelligence about Operation Prometheus. Throughout the briefing, Hollister remained silent, his expression growing progressively darker. 5 nuclear devices, he said when Matthews finished. Jesus Christ. Pierce knows the locations, the couriers, the activation protocols, everything. We need to move immediately. I have direct access to the President and Joint Chiefs, but we need to be careful. If Rawlings has allies in other agencies, tipping our hand too soon could be catastrophic. What's your plan? I'm putting together joint FBI Homeland Security teams to locate and secure each device. Minimal personnel, maximum security clearance. Meanwhile, we need to gather ironclad evidence against Rawlings and his network before they realize we're onto them. Matthews nodded. What about us? We're all technically fugitives. I killed Iranian citizens on their soil. That's an act of war. Hollister waved a hand dismissively. Let me worry about the legal complications. Right now, your team did what needed doing when the system failed. The President will understand that once the full picture emerges. And if he doesn't? Then I'll resign in protest and spend my retirement fund on the best damn lawyers money can buy. Hollister clasped Matthews' shoulder. You did good, Bill. Brought our girl home against impossible odds. That counts for something in my book? Matthews nodded, feeling the exhaustion of the past days finally catching up to him. What now? Now you and your team rest. You've earned it. Let me handle the next phase. As Hollister moved away to coordinate the response to Prometheus, Matthews found Pierce sitting alone in a corner of the main room, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders despite the warmth of the lodge. How are you holding up? He asked, taking the seat beside her. I'll be fine, she replied automatically, then reconsidered. Actually, I don't know. 3 weeks in that place. It changes your perspective. I know. And he did. Matthews had experienced capture once, early in his career. The memories still visited him in nightmares decades later. Jake's gone because of me, she said quietly. Jake made his choice. Same choice any of us would have made. The same choice you'd have made if positions were reversed. Pierce didn't argue the point. They both knew it was true. What happens after? She asked instead. Assuming we stop Prometheus, assuming we expose Rawlings and his network, what then? We go back to our lives as if none of this happened? Matthews had been asking himself the same question. At 60, with a career ended by the disaster in Afghanistan, what future awaited him? Return to his solitary apartment? Fish for compliments from younger operators who viewed him as a relic of a different era? I don't know, he admitted. But I do know this. What we did, bringing you home when the system abandoned you, that was right. Whatever comes after, we can face it knowing we did what needed to be done. Pierce nodded, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. You taught me that, you know. During Bud S, when everyone said I wouldn't make it because I was a woman, you just kept pushing me to be better than yesterday. Never acknowledged the doubt, never treated me differently. You earned your place, same as any operator. And now I've dragged you and the others into an unsanctioned operation that could end with all of us in prison. Some gratitude. Matthews allowed himself a rare smile. Worth it to see the look on Rawlings' face when he realizes you're not only alive but brought back enough evidence to bury him. For the first time since her rescue, Pierce smiled too, a ghost of her former self showing through the trauma of captivity. Rest, Matthews told her, standing. Tomorrow, we finish this. As he walked away, Matthews felt a curious sense of peace despite the danger still ahead. For 3 weeks, he had carried the weight of Pierce's supposed death, compounding the guilt he already bore from Afghanistan. Now, regardless of what came next, he had done what needed doing, brought one of his own home when the system failed. In a life defined by service to country, perhaps that was legacy enough. The next 72 hours unfolded with the controlled urgency of a military operation. Hollister's hand-picked teams moved simultaneously in 5 cities, using Pierce's intelligence to identify and neutralize the nuclear devices and their couriers. Each operation executed with surgical precision, maintaining absolute secrecy to prevent Rawlings from being alerted. At the NSA safe house in Montana, Matthews and the others recovered from their mission while providing additional intelligence support. Pierce, despite her ordeal, worked tirelessly with intelligence analysts to identify every member of Rawlings' network she had uncovered during her captivity. On the morning of the 3rd day, with all 5 devices secured and the immediate threat neutralized, Hollister gathered them in the main conference room. Rawlings has been taken into custody, he announced without preamble. Along with 14 other conspirators across multiple agencies, the evidence you provided, combined with financial records and communications intercepts, was irrefutable. A collective exhale passed through the room, relief mingled with vindication. What about Sullivan? Matthews asked. All charges dropped. He's being released as we speak. And us? Donovan inquired. Last I checked, we committed several international felonies. Hollister's expression remained serious. The president has been fully briefed on Operation Prometheus and the circumstances of Lieutenant Pierce's rescue. He's authorized a complete classification of all related events under Presidential Finding 11-9. Meaning, Ramirez pressed, meaning officially none of this happened. Lieutenant Pierce was never captured, never declared KIA. She was on a deep cover assignment that is now successfully concluded. You gentlemen were never in Iran. Master Sergeant Wilson, regrettably, died in a training accident. He'll receive the Distinguished Service Cross posthumously. The clinical rewriting of history felt wrong. But Matthews understood the necessity. Some truths were too complicated, too dangerous for public consumption. What about Rawlings? Pierce asked. Will the public know what he did? Hollister shook his head. Official story. Admiral Rawlings has been arrested for espionage, details classified for national security. The full truth would create panic, undermine public confidence in military leadership, and potentially destabilize international relations with Iran and Russia at a critical time. So he gets away with it, Pierce said bitterly. He'll spend the rest of his life in a federal supermax with no possibility of parole, Hollister countered. That's not getting away with anything. Matthews understood Pierce's frustration. After what she had endured, the sanitized official version felt like another betrayal. But he also recognized the pragmatic necessity of Hollister's approach. What about us? Reynolds asked. Do we just go back to our lives as if nothing happened? Hollister's expression softened slightly. That part is up to each of you. The president has authorized me to offer options. What kind of options? Donovan asked skeptically. Full retirement with honors for those who want it. Or, Hollister paused. A new unit, off the books, reporting directly to a small oversight committee comprising myself, the Director of National Intelligence, and 2 others. Doing what exactly? Matthews asked. Handling situations like this one, when the regular channels are compromised, when traditional teams can't be used for political or operational reasons. Gray operations, Ramirez translated. With complete deniability but full support, Hollister confirmed. Your experience, your judgment, your unique skill sets, they're still valuable. Perhaps more than ever in a world where the lines between friend and enemy have blurred. Matthews looked around at his team. Men he had served with for decades, who had risked everything to rescue Pierce when the system abandoned her. Each had come out of retirement, left comfortable lives behind for this mission. Would they be willing to do it again? For how long? Until age finally caught up with even their formidable skills? His gaze fell on Pierce, who was watching him intently. The unspoken question in her eyes was clear. What would he choose? I need time to think about it, Matthews said finally. We all do. Hollister nodded. Of course, take a week, but know this. What you did, bringing Lieutenant Pierce home when the system failed her, stopping Operation Prometheus when traditional channels were compromised, that's exactly the kind of operation I'm talking about. The kind that saves lives without anyone ever knowing they were in danger. As the meeting concluded, Matthews stepped outside onto the lodge's porch, breathing in the crisp Montana air. The mountains rose in the distance, ancient and enduring, a reminder that nations and conflicts were temporary against the backdrop of geological time. Pierce joined him a moment later, standing silently beside him as they both contemplated the view. Will you do it? She asked finally. Take Hollister's offer? Matthews considered the question carefully. At 60, he had thought his operational days were behind him. The mission to rescue Pierce had pushed his aging body to its limits. Yet it had also awakened something he had thought lost. Purpose, clarity, the unique satisfaction of facing impossible odds for the right reasons. I don't know, he admitted. But I do know this. I'm not ready for a rocking chair just yet. Pierce smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes for the first time since her rescue. Good. Because I'm requesting assignment to whatever unit you end up commanding. You have a full career ahead of you, Kate. Don't tie yourself to a bunch of old war horses. Those old war horses came for me when everyone else wrote me off, she replied simply. I'd rather serve with people I trust than advance my career with people I don't. Matthews nodded, understanding completely. In their line of work, trust was the only currency that truly mattered. Everything else, rank, recognition, even patriotism, was secondary to the bond between operators who had faced death together. Whatever I decide, he told her, it will be about doing what's right, not what's easy or officially sanctioned. I would expect nothing less, Bear. She used his old call sign naturally, a sign that regardless of rank or age, they were now peers in the most fundamental way. As the sun began to set behind the Montana mountains, casting long shadows across the wilderness, Matthews felt a sense of possibility he hadn't experienced since before Afghanistan. The future remained uncertain, fraught with potential dangers and difficult choices. But for now, in this moment, he had done what needed doing, brought one of his own home when the system failed, stopped a catastrophic attack before it could claim innocent lives, honored the sacrifice of a brother in arms who had given everything for the mission. In a world of shifting loyalties and moral ambiguities, perhaps that clarity of purpose was legacy enough.